The Jozi Book Fair has been making literature easily accessible through this annual event that promotes the culture of reading and writing in all the languages and all the art forms in the country. Now, in its 10th year, the festival is putting a spotlight on highlighting the narratives of the working class, often ignored and disregarded, under the theme Literature and Working People. For its 10th installment, the event will be headlined by poet, novelist and political activist Wally Serote, Swedish worker, poet and author Emil and African literature professor Bheki Peterson. And joining us now in studio to reflect on the 10-year journey and what to expect on this year is the director of the Kanya College, the NGO that organizes the book fair, Opa Lehulere. A very good morning to you, Baba. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome.
Thanks very much, and thanks to your listeners too.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Now, this year, the Jozi Book Fair is celebrating its 10 years. Just take us back to when you guys started, how the journey has been over the years, and how you plan to do things differently from the previous years.
Yes, I think when Jozi Book Fair started in 2009, I think what we observed at the time was that within South Africa, especially among the youth, especially among the very young, there had been a fairly sharp decline in reading. And that's been borne out by a number of studies over the years. Now, South Africa is a very youthful country. It's probably, like the overwhelming majority, 70-odd%, are like young people. And I think we felt that, it was important that we take up the challenge of promoting reading, of promoting writing. And we think that the young people and, of course, our older generation have a lot of stories to tell. I think literature, we know, for us was part of an important catalytic intervention during the anti-apartheid years. The poets were quite important, the authors were quite important, and we felt that as part of a transformation of the country, it was important that literature be revived so that it's much broader participation of various elements of the population, and that it doesn't become a kind of an elite occupation. And I think what the Jozi Book Fair has tried to do over the 10 years has been to exactly try and get literature into schools, and not just for people to read, the young people to read, but actually to write. And we've had quite a considerable amount of success. Yeah. Among this, from the 6-year-old to 12-year-olds, from the kind of the teenage groups in schools, and of course we began focusing now, as is the theme of this year, of saying the people who are actually working people who have stories to tell, they've been the heart of literature, and it's time for them to resurface into the literary landscape.
And I would imagine the issue of literacy will definitely pop up in this book fair. We know that the levels of reading in South Africa among South Africans is alarmingly low. Why is this so, and what can be done, or rather what more can be done? We are doing something already, but what more can we do in order to counter this issue?
I think the important thing, firstly, we think as the Jozi Book Fair, is to take reading and the whole kind of culture of reading issues to where people already are. For example, I'll give you an example of this. We know that some of the most important functions of our society are the community health workers who walk the streets, who deliver medicine, who do that. And Kenya College has actually generated a program where we've spoken to community health workers, we've given them access to reading, and of course they'll be launching a book that they've done in this book fair. So I think that the first important thing we think is that literature, we mustn't just wait for particular individuals who have probably dispositions out of their background to write and to publish. We must actually go out there and encourage people to publish and convince them that actually you do have a story to tell and that your literature actually is valuable. So that's the one important thing. The second thing that, in a sense, we've done, this is the 3rd year when young people in schools have launched books of short stories that they've done. And again, we go to schools throughout the year, we train them in how to write, we make them access books, we link them to libraries in the areas in which they live. We have a partnership with the City of Johannesburg where, we produce books, we collect books, and of course we contribute these to the libraries. So the point is our idea is that we have to be activists in the struggle for reading and writing, and not passively expect that this is going to happen on its own. I think if we take an activist and we bring, the rich experience this country has of activism, into the field of reading and writing. And I think we will be able to transform people.
Now, a decade later, we haven't been seeing local authors as we used to before. Why is that? And what is it that you're going to do differently to change this narrative?
Yes. I think one of our big challenges in this country is the kind of very narrowly concentrated ownership of publishing houses.
Okay.
I think in publishing houses, what publishing houses have tended to do, as you rightly say, over the last 10 years, I mean, there was a kind of a post-apartheid burst of new literatures, of new authors, which has now declined. And we think that part of it has to do with the extreme emphasis on the so-called financial bottom line by the major publishing houses. So they kind of cherry-pick those particular authors that they think are going to learn. Now, one of the things, in a way, that the Jozi Book Fair is doing is that we are also intervening in making the printing of books, the editing of books, quite accessible. I just made an example about.
I understand there will be a special tribute to Professor Hosseini this year. And tell us more briefly about that, and give us more details about the book fair.
Yes, the book fair itself will be held. We have a schools program on the 30th and 31st of August. That's about more than 50 schools, almost 800 learners at the Mary Fitzgerald Square. And we have a tribute to Hosseini on the Sunday, probably a big part of that tribute. We have Wally Serote, people who are his colleagues, reading from his work. We have the daughter of Hosseini also reading from his work. And we have a range of young poets who will be also honoring his work, as well, of course, as the music that he loved, because he wasn't just a poet. He was really, I mean, he linked up poetry to jazz, to music. And we will be having jazz musicians also honoring him as a writer who was also an appreciator of jazz.
Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate the time. That's Director of Kanya College, Opa Lehulere, speaking to us about their 10th anniversary and edition of the Jozi Book Fair. Now, this festival is set to take place from the 30th of August to the 2nd of September at the Mary Fitzgerald Square in Newtown in Johannesburg.